My son called me crying, saying he needed my kidney or he'd die within 6 months. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I told him yes immediately. I'd give him whatever he needed. I scheduled surgery. I started the testing process. Then 3 days before the transplant, I saw him running on a treadmill at my gym. Not walking, not struggling. Running. Full speed. For 45 minutes straight. I called my doctor from the parking lot. I canceled the surgery. Then I called the police. Because it turns out faking kidney failure to harvest your mother's organs is not just morally bankrupt. It's a federal crime. But let me start from the beginning, because the betrayal here runs deeper than one phone call. I'm 73 years old. I'm a retired pharmacist. I worked for 42 years, first at a hospital, then at a private pharmacy I co-owned. I sold my share when I retired 5 years ago. I live comfortably, not rich, but stable. My son Brian is 41. He's a commercial real estate broker, or he was. The market has been rough the last few years, and his commissions dried up. He's been struggling financially for about 18 months. He sold his condo and moved into a rental. He drives a 10-year-old car now instead of the BMW he used to lease. I've helped him. Small amounts here and there. $1,500 for rent 1 month. $800 for car repairs. $3,000 when he needed to pay his taxes. I never asked for repayment. He's my son. You help when you can. 3 months ago, he called me on a Tuesday evening. He sounded terrible, shaky. He said he needed to tell me something and I needed to sit down. I sat down. He said he'd been to the doctor, multiple doctors. He'd been feeling tired for months, nauseous, pain in his lower back. He'd ignored it until he passed blood in his urine. The doctors ran tests. Kidney function was severely compromised. Both kidneys. Chronic kidney disease, stage 4. He'd need dialysis within weeks, and within a year, probably a transplant. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. I said, "How did this happen?" He said they weren't sure. Maybe genetic. Maybe an undiagnosed infection from years ago. Maybe just bad luck. I asked what the treatment plan was. He said dialysis 3 times a week. Then he'd go on the transplant list. But the wait was 3 to 5 years. He might not have that long. I said I'd get tested. If I was a match, he could have my kidney. He said no. He couldn't ask me to do that. I was 73 years old. Surgery at my age was risky. I said I'm healthy. I walk 3 miles a day. I take no medications except a baby aspirin. I'm getting tested. He said he didn't want to pressure me. I said, "You're not pressuring me. I'm your mother. This isn't a question." He started crying. He said thank you. He said he'd been so scared to tell me. So scared I'd say no or think he was being dramatic. I said I'd never say no, not to this. We hung up. I called my doctor the next morning. I explained the situation. She referred me to a nephrologist. I had blood work done, imaging, a full physical. The nephrologist said my kidney function was excellent for my age. I was a potential donor candidate. We'd need more tests to determine if I was a match for Brian. The testing took 3 weeks. I was a match. 6 out of 6 markers. The nephrologist said that was as good as it gets. I called Brian with the news. He cried again. He said I was saving his life. We scheduled the surgery for 8 weeks out. That would give me time to do pre-op testing and get clearance from cardiology and pulmonology. Brian needed to get stable on dialysis first. I told my friends. I told my book club. I told my neighbors. Everyone said how brave I was. How selfless. I didn't feel brave. I felt like I was doing what any parent would do. I started preparing. I arranged for a friend to stay with me for 2 weeks post-op. I stocked my freezer with easy meals. I paid my bills in advance. I bought comfortable clothes that wouldn't press on the incision site. 6 weeks before surgery, Brian called and asked if I could loan him $5,000. He said his savings were gone. Dialysis wasn't covered completely by insurance. He had copays, transportation costs. He'd had to cut back his work hours because he was so tired. I wrote him a check. 4 weeks before surgery, he asked for another $3,000. Same reasons. I gave it to him. I didn't think anything of it. He was sick. Sick people have expenses. I was about to give him a kidney. What was $8,000 compared to that? 3 days before the surgery, I went to my gym. I go every Tuesday and Friday morning, water aerobics at 9:30. It's mostly women my age. We've been doing it together for years. I got there early. I decided to walk on the treadmill for 20 minutes before class. I went upstairs to the cardio area, and I saw my son. He was running, not jogging, running. His face was red from exertion, sweat soaking through his shirt. He had earbuds in. He was watching something on the TV mounted in front of him. I stood there holding my water bottle. He didn't see me. He was focused on the screen. He ran for another 15 minutes while I watched. Then he slowed to a walk. Then he stopped. He wiped down the machine. He grabbed his towel and headed toward the locker room. I followed him at a distance. He walked normally. No pain. No limping. No signs of someone in kidney failure. I went to my car. I sat there shaking. Then I called my nephrologist. I told her what I'd seen. She was quiet. Then she said kidney failure patients on dialysis can sometimes exercise, but running at high intensity for extended periods would be unusual. Most dialysis patients are profoundly fatigued. They struggle with basic activities. I asked if someone could fake kidney failure. She said it would be difficult to fake the blood work and imaging, but not impossible if someone had access to medical records or knew how to manipulate the system. I asked what I should do. She said, cancel the surgery immediately and contact the transplant center. I called the hospital. I spoke to the transplant coordinator. I explained what I'd seen. She said they'd investigate. She said the surgery was off until they could verify Brian's medical condition independently. Then I called Brian. He answered, sounding cheerful. He said he was just getting home from a walk, trying to stay active even though he was exhausted. I said, I saw you at the gym this morning. Silence. I said, I saw you running, full speed. For almost an hour, more silence. I said, I'm canceling the surgery. He said, Mom, wait. I can explain. I said, explain what? That you lied about kidney failure? That you were going to let me have major surgery to remove an organ you don't need? He said it wasn't like that. He could explain. I said, I'm hanging up now. Don't call me back. He said, Mom, please, I'm in trouble. I need help. I hung up. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. It was the transplant coordinator. She said they'd contacted Brian's nephrologist. The nephrologist had no record of Brian as a patient. They'd called the dialysis center Brian claimed to be using. No record of him there either. She said they were reporting this to the authorities. Attempting to fraudulently obtain an organ was a serious crime. I said, good. That evening, 2 detectives came to my house. They asked me to tell them everything I did. The phone call 3 months ago. The diagnosis Brian described. The testing I'd done. The surgery that was scheduled. The $8,000 I'd given him. The gym sighting. One detective took notes. The other asked if I had any documentation. I gave them copies of the testing results, emails from Brian about the surgery, text messages where he'd asked for money and cited dialysis costs. The detectives said they'd investigate. This could be wire fraud if he'd used false medical claims to solicit money. It could be attempted organ trafficking. They'd be in touch. They arrested Brian 4 days later. He was charged with wire fraud, attempted theft by deception, and fraud related to organ procurement. His bail was set at $50,000. He called me from jail crying. He said he'd made a terrible mistake. He'd been desperate. He'd gotten in deep with some bad people. He owed money, serious money. He'd thought if he could just get through this rough patch, he'd make it right. I asked if he ever had kidney failure. He said no. He'd faked the medical records. He had a friend who worked in medical billing who'd helped him create fake lab results and imaging reports. I asked if he'd really planned to go through with the surgery. He said he didn't know. He'd thought maybe at the last minute he'd back out, say he'd gotten better, or maybe he'd sell the kidney on the black market. There were buyers. He could have gotten $200,000. I felt sick. I said, "You were going to sell my kidney?" He said he was desperate. He said people did desperate things when they had no options. I said, "You had options. You could have told me the truth, asked for help, gone to a debt counselor, filed bankruptcy, anything but this." He said he was sorry. He said he loved me. I hung up. The trial was 4 months ago. Brian pleaded guilty to wire fraud and attempted theft. The organ procurement charge was dropped in the plea deal. He was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. I was in the courtroom. I sat in the back. Brian's attorney tried to paint him as a desperate man who'd made a terrible mistake. The prosecutor showed the fake medical records, the emails where Brian had described symptoms he didn't have, the text messages asking me for money for treatments he wasn't receiving. The judge asked if I wanted to make a statement. I stood up. I said my son tried to trick me into major surgery so he could steal my kidney and sell it. I don't know the man who did that. I raised someone better. But the man sitting here today isn't my son anymore. Brian looked at me, tears running down his face. The judge sentenced him 3 years, plus restitution of $8,000. I haven't visited him in prison. He's written me letters, 17 so far. I haven't opened them. My friends tell me I should forgive him, that he's still my son, that people make mistakes. But this wasn't a mistake. This was a calculated plan to mutilate me for profit. I'm 73 years old. I would have given him a kidney if he'd actually needed it. I would have given him anything. All he had to do was ask. Instead, he lied. He faked medical records. He let me prepare for surgery. He took $8,000 from me under false pretenses, and he was planning to sell my organ to pay gambling debts. I've thought a lot about that moment in the gym. What if I'd gone a different day? What if I'd skipped my workout? What if I hadn't seen him? I'd be missing a kidney right now, or worse. Surgery at my age isn't without risks. I could have died on that table, for nothing, for a lie. I saw Brian for a reason. I was in the right place at the right time to see the truth, and the truth saved my life. What would you do in my situation? Thank you for listening to my story.